Welcome to more Dark Souls 2 with me, Oni Black Mage. We are currently in the Shrine of Amara. Let's see, we just went down this incredibly perilous path. Chest ahead, alright. We found a small treasure and there's just a chest on the very tippy edge of this very narrow, full of mages and a troll, little peninsula. The Sunlight Blade, alright. That's probably like the great sword, the soul great sword that I have. Which I hear are very powerful weapons, and I'm sure they are. Though, keep in mind that more often than not, we're not swinging our staves or going into melee, so spells like that are really more of use to warriors who need to inflict extra damage against magic-weak enemies, which is great for them. But there aren't exactly many spells that penetrate magic-resistant enemies that we have. And you know what? I kind of respect them doing things like this where, again, you can keep going forward on the main path and just kind of ignore this entire area. You didn't have to branch your way out into this danger area. Let's see, is that something over there? But my goodness, this thing constantly has you checking your ground, has you checking your environment, has you checking your sides for all hidden treasures. I love that stuff. And it's really simple when you think about it. It's so incredibly simple, you'd think more people would do it. It's actually something that I miss in other genres, like say the shooter genre. Remember old school shooters, like, well, maybe some of you don't, but for those that do, and for those that need to be reminded, here's how it kind of went down. Old school shooters, kind of like Doom, Wolfenstein, or actually, let me quote other, like Duke Nukem, you know, Quake, maybe other games that weren't made by id, but they were great. Not only did they have a straight-up arcade shooting action that kept things moving in a very fast-paced sort of way. Like, your characters were constantly moving fast. Not this sort of constant huffing hike for realism. It felt like they were on basically ice skates the entire time. But what made those games especially cool was all the secrets. Finding secrets was part of the game, frankly. Sometimes it made things easier, sometimes you found bonus weapons or health, or sometimes you got to find secret areas or entire new levels in some cases. All the secrets that people would find. And that stuff was awesome. And frankly, you don't see them these days. A game that I find should be appreciated a little bit more is a game called Rage, which was id's last work before they started doing a few more other more recent stuff. I think they had like the next Doom I think they're working on. And I actually really enjoyed Rage. Not necessarily for the ground it was trying to cover. I appreciate it for two reasons. One, it had good AI, which is something that's kind of uncommon in shooters. And two, it tried to really grab a lot of old school references in game design in terms of like having secret areas and things like that. Checking secret walls or jumping to secret areas or exploring past your environment. You didn't see that past that genre in the 90s, that sort of era. These days, the modern military shooter or sci-fi shoot-'em-up seems to be the status quo for shooters these days, which is really kind of sad. That's why we have so many generics. These days, most first-person shooters are going to be the military or paramilitary shooter, in which, hey, you know what? We're part of XYZ army and we're getting invaded, or we're invading some other enemy or alien or whatever, and we just need to move forward in these hallways shooting anything that shoots back. And, you know, whatever, just give a very flimsy reason. Everything's basically in a hallway. It's about as linear as you can get. And that's perfectly apparently okay. It's weird. You go from these transitions of these huge open world environments full of secrets, full of exploration. You know, you can take your time and really enjoy the design and the environment. And then they go and make everything a straight hallway. An absolute straight hallway. There is no reason in 99% of the modern day first person shooters to ever look behind you. You're constantly moving forward. Constantly. And unless you're in a mission that retreads old ground from the opposite way, you never return to older areas. However, in the olden days, older days, like the old days of the olden days of the 90s, right? Since I have to remind myself that that's 20 years ago. But open environments, lots of secrets. You actually had to like basically tap use on every wall and check out everything. You know, if you wanted to find everything, there was always stuff to explore or find, and missions were very open-ended. Usually it concluded with the death of the boss or finding some like hidden exit or finding a key that allowed you to go out. But outside of that, you were free to approach the level however you wanted. Which was amazing because you really didn't have checkpoints back then. Now, the advent of the checkpoints in the hallway system did allow, you know, on a positive note, that's not necessarily a bad thing. What it allows is more complex scenarios to be set up in between every checkpoint, and if the difficulty proves too much, you didn't necessarily lose much progress, and that's great. However, it also means that you don't necessarily... for some odd reason, around that same time, they abandoned the old formula of having these open-air exploration-based environments. They don't have them anymore. I think like the only game that the game series that tries to keep that up is Serious Sam. I think that's the only one that tries to maintain that sort of old school vibe. And that's still a fun design that for some odd reason arbitrarily they stopped making. And I can't fathom why. It's like, wait a minute, the cornerstone of all first-person shooters gets abandoned because for some reason people feel that that's not popular, or maybe game designers for that sort of genre are just getting lazier. Or perhaps the incredible popularity of the modern military shooters like Medal of Honor, which eventually turned into Call of Duty, and all the other games started becoming more popular, and they decided to just abandon the old design theorems and go towards that. I don't know what the true story is. That's a research topic of its own. But my gosh, that's so incredibly depressing. These days, having the open environment is something you can only find in indies these days. There's so few AAA sort of titles that go using the old school design process. Which is a shame. It's like, where did they arbitrarily decide that this is where the industry, the genre is going to go in the future, and you know what made it popular in the first place is no longer popular? It makes no sense, and I don't believe the sales necessarily reflect that. After all, they're still selling. People still play the old school games like on their emulators or on their mobile devices, and they keep re-releasing it, and it keeps selling in limited quantities. But they just keep feeding people. They just keep feeding people the this old school design method, or the new school design method. I remember back in the day, Half-Life was a revolutionary game for quite a few reasons. The biggest reason, well, actually, I want to say there are two big reasons. Reason number one, and this is from a mechanics point of view, it's the first game that really pioneered and integrated into itself context cues. And context cues are something that you already take for granted these days in modern day gaming. What it is you walk into a room and, like, say, lights will flicker, or you walk into a point and all of a sudden it triggers this ambush. It's you doing something that triggers something else in the environment, be it an enemy, be it the environment itself, be it an object in the environment. That was amazing because it meant so much more. The environment suddenly became a living entity, something interactive. That was revolutionary. Most times the environment was just taken for granted or just used for cover when it came to first-person games. But this time, the environment was a thing. The fact that you could pick up and manipulate an object on a desk was mind-blowing at the time. And, you know, these days that's like basically just learning your primary colors. Like, nobody thinks about that, but that's how far we've come, really, in these years. It's really quite impressive. But what also made Half-Life really interesting is that it didn't have levels, which was an incredibly uncommon thing at the time. The fact that it didn't have levels in its design, and it was a continuous journey, as well as some puzzles to interrupt that flow. But it was a continuous journey forward, was something that was basically unheard of. You didn't have stages. It was a continuous journey. It was a continuous progress forward. Yeah, the sections were sectioned off, and each section kind of was its own quote-unquote level. But it wasn't a traditional, like, load and, like, mutually exclusive level where I walk through the door, suddenly I get a pause, I get to save, I get a score reflecting how many points I got for that level, and, you know, I can never do anything going back to it. That was pretty revolutionary at the time, and Half-Life 2 did more of that, for better or for worse, frankly. And while that's certainly a revolutionary game, and it's certainly spawned a lot of really good innovations in the genre, it's just, man, you take that for granted these days. And some of those monikers stopped. Like, they stopped using some of those. Many games still use the level design, frankly. And many games still use the continuous gameplay. That just, I don't know what you necessarily call it, but they just continuously flow from one stage to the next. Did you notice how in Dark Souls 2 that there's basically no load times? Like, the only loading you ever see is between when you die, to reload you back at the last bonfire. Otherwise, you don't have loading. You notice that? It's a cool subtlety. Look at that staff, it's standing straight up. Oh, that's funny. But you don't have loading. That's kind of cool, and sometimes a lot of people don't think about it, that, again, technology is improving to the point where this feels, again, that's, by the way, that's an important thing with open worlds. That's something that technology has enabled with open world design, is the fact that we can now move from one area to the next seamlessly, just in one flowing movement, without having to stop and load, basically. Load a new zone, load a new world, or pass through, you know, a screen that's basically kind of like you driving or flying somewhere. That's basically just a disguised loading screen. That, to me, is part of the immersion in the world. You're not interrupted and reminded that you're playing a game with a loading screen. You're continuously moving forward as your character, moving your adventure without worrying about that sort of stuff. That, to me, is really good game design. It's all those small details put together. And again, that's something I find is also key for designing a proper open world. To go back to beating down Batman Arkham City, one of the criticisms I have for it as an open world design that it failed in is that anytime you went to any new area, you had to stop and do a load screen. You open a door, load screen. You go to an area, load screen. You're gonna go fight someone in a different part of the same building, load screen. That is not good open world design. It does not feel like an open world at that point. It feels like a bunch of disjointed levels that are just connected. And that's not part of the immersion. It doesn't feel like an open world. An open world needs to be, I can get to point A, not point A to point B, with a couple of loading screens in between. You know? It's kind of disjointed, and that disjunction is noticeable and takes you out of the immersion. That, to me, is major points off. But they say they're going to remove that and improve it on the on Arkham Knight coming out, so we'll see. This area is surprisingly very challenging, and I think it's the lack of cover that makes it so challenging. And the fact that it's hard to dodge while in water, and it's easy to slip off. These mages fire constantly, and the little lizards keep getting at you. And not to mention, there's two of those Archdrake monks in the foreground, and getting past them is a trial. My gosh. And the fact that there isn't much cover between these means you need to be timing your rolls or have a really good magic block shield, because these guys will chase you forever. I find pulling them back here where there's cover is probably the best solution, but jeez. This is a challenging area, just by proxy of its encounter design. Not a fan of it, I have to say. I can only imagine what it's like on New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus. Again, I really feel... Oh, great. Okay. You know what? I'm going to fast forward to when I actually beat this part. I should really just respec to a Faith character and use lightning. Alright, well we're gonna come back when I actually beat this part. Okay, and we're back. I can't believe how many attempts it took just to get to this point. It seriously took like 5 or 6 tries to get past just these 2 guards guarding this door. Because their way of outpacing me and the fury of their attack and the fact that they attack both at once, I had to basically run back to the hut, pull one, and get the other one to separate, and then take them off one by one. Because wow, that was terrible. That was literally terrible. If I had lightning, I could snipe them, but because lightning has almost an infinite range basically, while soul arrows have a very finite range. And my gosh, I'm feeling the mileage now. I have to say, the fact that I struggled so much in this area. And by the way, getting to this area, I had to basically strap on Strade's robes, his black robes, for the really good magic defense, as well as get the golden wing shield for the magic defense and block and roll my way past there. I can't believe I had to do all that. I might as well have just been a straight mage. This is such a magic intensive area. This is challenging if you're a mixed build. I think I'm going to have to redo my focus next time. At least these little toxic bugs are a problem. I swear, if they were all those Archdrake monks, I'd be... Nope. And look at that, I'm barely... I have to basically pull out 3 of those soul arrows to take those guys down. Bonfire head, good. Whoa, was that a big bug? And even... Yeah, that's a gigantic bug in the distance. Whoa, that thing's huge. At least they're not very aggressive. They're not even making an attempt to walk towards me. Fine by me, frankly. I'm not complaining. Ah, perfect. Right here. I don't mind that as soon as I respawn this area, I'll basically be surrounded by bugs, because these bugs are not very aggressive. Oh! They're releasing an orange mist, so basically that's probably equipment deterioration and breakage. So it's not poison, it's basically equipment deterioration. Wow, he didn't take many hits for being such a big guy. Alright, well, looks like the thing's ahead. By the way, you probably noticed I have a new staff. By going through and killing those Archdrakes, one of the mages dropped this new staff. I think the Staff of Amara, basically. Pretty good. I upgraded it a little bit. Deals better damage than my Lizard on a Stick, and that had excellent mileage. So I'm going to recharge myself, take care of these bugs again, and keep moving forward. I kind of like the jewel tip to it. It's a nice looking staff. The lizard tied to a stick I just thought was really funny. And again, this staff was a drop, so I'm really glad. I didn't have any of my farming gear for drops and things like that, like the Jester gear or the Golden Serpent Ring. And it really should have occurred to me that when I was fighting these guys, I probably should have been farming the mages and seeing what kind of mage gear would drop from them. Because anytime you find a character, you can probably get pieces of their equipment as well as their armor, and usually their weapon, if it's an unusual weapon. So again, if you're going to do a farming run, make sure to have drop gear if you're interested in picking up whatever those guys have. More mages. Look at the range on that. It's so stupidly large. Alright, this is what I basically have to do. I usually have to go and put back on Strade's gear and put on the Golden Wing Shield just to get all that magic resistance. Which, by the way, I kind of wish Strade's robes actually did something better than just have good resistances. Because, man, these are some cool looking robes, I'm telling you. But because the better robes, which are the lion ones, look so feminine, it's like I might as well just play a feminine character. Alright, using this pillar as cover seems to be essential. Oh, almost slipped off the edge there. Okay, basically playing smart and sniping is the name of the game here. I can see that all of these areas are connected on the same lake, which is nice. You just had to basically traverse it a specific way. I do not want to die right here in this lake, I swear. Alright, let's see if we can just get close, I swear. I'm just trying to snipe these guys and get a lock on them. Like I said, they fire so quickly, and they're great. They're basically great solar arrows. There's no way there's a regular solar arrows. I also like how the range of their soul arrows is so beyond other soul arrows. Well, look at all those drops I never gonna get. Oh well. Let's come back here again. I kind of wish I knew their weakness. It's probably lightning. Again, Faith characters have it a lot easier in this game, I feel. They really bumped up their usefulness. And I do not understand why there's so few good mage gear out there. Because you have the Lion Mage stuff, which increases it. If you talk to the Cleric Lady, she gives you a priest set, which is really good, especially the hood, because the hood allows you to have extra casting slots. In addition to, which actually is arguably better than Straight's hood, which increases your casting time. It really depends on what you want more of. I think once I start using more of the super high-end spells, I'm going to switch over to that hood. In addition, there's also the Hexer's hood, that the guy who sells hexes right there in the Huntsman Copse. If you have, I think, 20 in both Intelligence and Faith, he gives you a full set that he's wearing. And the Hexer hood that he has also increases, it has the same exact functionality as the Priest's hood that the Cleric Lady gives you. And again, it basically increases the number of spell usages that you have. But I don't necessarily like the way his hood looks, although the Priest's hood looks like you're wearing long hair. Again, very feminine equipment, so it's like, why does the better equipment look all feminine? It's like when I was looking at other mage sets. The other mage sets out there are both feminine. It's the red sort of gear that the lady mages wear in the windmill over in the Earthen Peak. They drop gear that, of course, is very feminine because they were all ladies. And later there's a Black Witch set where it's useful. It actually increases your spell power, but again, it's for a witch. It is explicitly a dress, a very gothic-looking dress. So it's like, And it kind of goes in tone with this because all the magic casters, in terms of bosses, have been women. So it's like, for some odd reason, if you're going to play a mage, if you're perfectly okay with wearing whatever, you don't care how you look like, fine. Me, I'm one of those, like, if you're going to have cool artistic visual expression in terms of wearing clothes in different sets, and this certainly has a lot of excellent clothing and armor sets, then if you're going to be a guy, then you need to look badass or you need to look cool. You know, like right now I think this looks really cool. These flowing black robes, the mask, you know, the nice silver on black lining, that looks really cool. But if you're going to look like a lady, then you need to look good. You need to look attractive. You need to be functional, matching. You'd be like, oh, this isn't like a Barbie doll sort of deal. Hey, you know what? It's cool to have some matching standards, you know? You need to, if you're going to be kicking ass, then you need to look good while doing it. Can we agree to that? So, I have standards for both the male and female avatars that I play as. And that kind of seems like a shallow point, but fortunately in this game, gender is a shallow point. It doesn't matter if you're playing a male or a female. It doesn't make any difference to your stats or anything like that. So, if the best armor sets for mages are going to be female-oriented gear, then I'm just going to redo myself towards a lady avatar. Alright, if I'm going to face a dark spirit, then I'm going to go ahead and do armor on. I guess rhino armor, I swear, is really cool, very bulky, but doesn't look very feminine. And maybe that's using a sexist term, but I don't think this accentuates any female curves. Just saying. Let's see. It reminds me of a joke. My friend who's a I have a friend who's an ordained pastor, and he has a bunch of funny church expressions. And one of them that he goes, and this is non-denominational, so this isn't religious or anything. He basically said, "God made man, but he shaped women." It's like, you guy, funny. Okay, so Dark Spirit, Peculiar Kindler. Okay, so he's a hexer. I should have stuck with my mage gear. Wow. So he's mixing up soul arrows with hexing. Okay. Wow, he casts fast. Wow, and he moves fast too. Okay, my soul mass didn't do as much damage as I was. Wow, he has crystal soul mass. Wow, this guy's dangerous. Actually, maybe that was crystal soul arrow. Oh, come on. Come on, soul mass. Thank you, Soul Vortex. He was right there in the front. He had a lot of hit points for a mage, too. Wow. He had like 2,000 hit points. I think I have maybe 1,300, 1,400. He was pretty tough for a mage. I should just refocus. I'm really getting to that point. I think I'll do one more boss and then I'll refocus. Of course, I just hit a bonfire, so I'm not sure how far the next boss is going to be. Haven't exactly faced any enemies that suggest there's a boss nearby. Like I said, normally there's usually a really tough enemy that suggests there's a boss nearby. Of course, granted, those Archdrake monks, those are pretty tough in my book, or at least for how I prefer to play. They counter my style of play almost precisely. Which again just goes to show that there is no perfect gameplay style, and no matter what you play as, you're going to find an opposite play style that will counter however you prefer to play. Alright, so there's something behind. Let me just check behind these pillars, because I see something over there in the distance, and I want to make sure I'm not falling off the edge here. But doing a pretty good job of staying human. So let's keep it that way. Alright, so past these pillars, I thought there might be something behind most of them, but it looks like not the only thing behind these pillars is a long drop. How could I not? I thought I was standing on top of that. I'm not gonna jump across and jump over my death here. Maybe there's a way around carefully. There's a lot of red bloodstains around here. Must be something valuable. Okay, okay, good. I can just squeeze across here. Let's not make the same mistake of this guy over here. Alright, perfect. Well, I'm going to pause here. That's a valuable, good spell. Thank you. But I'm going to pause here and pick it up next time. So thanks for watching. Bye.